I just watched a very stunning piece done by the realnews.com, and that's available on YouTube. And I really respect the hell out of Real News. They are one of the most contextually informative uh, news channels, independent news channels that I've come across. And I watch a lot of these type of news channels, and but even for me, and I'm fairly well informed. Even for me, I was shocked, literally shocked, because uh, this is this just goes against even what many of the supposed progressive, independent, progressive channels you can find are saying. You have YouTube. You have TYT, Democracy Now. You have secular talk. You have the Rational National. There are dozens, and they're toting the Western propaganda, and that the corporate Western media and the Western propaganda, they're toting all this. And so anyways, the video from the realnews.com, the is called "China is Leading the World in Eradicating Poverty." And interestingly enough, there's a gentleman, I forget the guy's name, but it's Mark something from, well, just check out the video from the Real News. And it's exactly what I just gave as a title. China is leading the world in eradicating poverty. And but one of the things that the gentleman that was on that was being interviewed, he stated that it wasn't his figures that he was going by, but the figures that the World Bank was saying, and that the World Bank is not giving you the context behind it unless you ask specifically for that context. And so it was unbelievable that what he stated. And the thing is that this is if this is if this is correct, and the World Bank does have these statistics, and it is specific to China, then the whole capitalistic globalization that the Western nations, the propaganda that the Western nations are putting out, then China is the global driver for bringing more economic parity for the masses, whereas the Western world and the Western capitalism is doing the exact opposite. So it's the Western world that takes credit, and the World Bank is actually, by the statistics, stating the exact opposite. Now, this is not to say that China is not doing some egregious things, such as the God, I can't think of the Muslim group that lives out in the western part of China. That there's a million of them in what the Western world continues to call concentration camps, and and exploitation, still, let's put that in parity to what the Western world has been doing. And so there is a monstrous double standard here. And I think anybody who is fair-minded can say that what China is doing with this one example, which has been floated around Western media, and even done by Al Jazeera and Press TV, but I think that's all. A lot of that is echo chamber, and so this blows the complete and utter bigoted hypocrisy, as well as the criminality of the West, and how making China the bad guy, and when China may do some things that are bad, but the Western world is 1,000 times worse. So I have to say, and I've also seen other some done by Al Jazeera. There was things done by DW, which is a Western media out of Germany, and Telesur, which actually, and I have to give credit to those sources for actually showing and doing stories about how China is benefiting not only their own citizens and driving out away poverty, and attempting to do a very fast-paced eradication of poverty. And these people, the Chinese politicians, are at least making an attempt. Now, they are human. They do have I'm sure they have their own private little agendas, but that can be said of the West. So that also gives the bald-faced lie that the West constantly pushes, that China is the boogeyman. So, and I've said this before, the West is always the principled good, but this points to the bald-faced lie that is the West. And the West, and by this particular story that came out on the realnews.com, basically states that the enemy of the West is the West's power brokers. Because what they're doing is creating obscene inequality, obscene poverty, and they are working directly against their own domestic populace. So check it out, because it goes with everything I've been doing, every video I've posted, and it puts a lie to the face. And let's face it, when you take 60% of your own domestic population and you pull them out of poverty, of crushing poverty, then you got to be doing something right. And then there's even a big, then there's another factor that they're pulling 30% of internationally of the quote unquote third world nations and bringing 30% of their populations out of poverty. Well, I'd say that China is doing more uh, for bringing for trying to eradicate poverty, not just in its own not just to its own domestic population, but to others. I'd say that gives them a huge, big thumbs up. Not to say that they can't that they don't make mistakes. Not to say that they don't have their own agendas that can negatively impact others and their own population. But hell yeah, and let me tell you, uh, I've had a strong suspicion to uh, due to observation, due to coming to understand the propaganda of my own country and all of the Western nations. Oh, and interestingly enough, the UN actually even put out something similar to this. They didn't come out, basically outright like the real news did with this story, breaking this story, but they have alluded to it. And I was watching one with the IMF, and they kind of alluded to this too. And that was from the head of the IMF. So, and that's, and as I said, I've seen others indicating this, giving a strong indication of this. So, I have to tell you, China is backing Venezuela. China is backing several other South and Central American nations, and while there's a lot of talk about how the price tag uh, uh, economic loaning to other nations may be predatory, uh, but let's face it, that's something that the U.S. has done. That's something that the EU has done, and so as I say, let's stop being hypocritical, stop being bigoted, and start opening up our eyes, because for all the wrongs that the Chinese may be doing, they are 1,000 times better for their own domestic population and for other populations from other countries than we in the West have. And this has been going on for centuries upon centuries. So, um, and incidentally, there's been plenty of stories of Chinese companies in the U.S. Uh, providing more, and this is not just from the independent, but from mainstream, local mainstream, and sometimes getting into the national, uh, but only a small snippet of Chinese companies doing good by the American population. For instance, there's one particular one that I just recently saw of a Chinese firm in Massachusetts, and how they've been helping the Massachusetts economy, and how they've been getting pressure and media political and media bias. So, and that's just one. And Chinese firms are doing this many places in the United States. So I think that puts a huge question on who's looking out for other people, other countries' interests better. And it certainly doesn't sound like it's being in the interest of of the domestic governments who are looking out for the interests. Oh, and incidentally, before anybody says, "Oh, he's he's Chinese," I'm not Chinese. I'm Korean, actually, South Korean. I was born in South Korea. I was adopted when I was 7.5, and was naturalized in 1980 something. And so I lived. I'm 48, and I've lived in this country for over 40 years. So, and I've never been to China. Hell, I haven't even been back to South Korea. So, if you think, if you start calling me a commie or a traitor, or get your fucking facts straight before you fucking start doing that sort of crap. So, but for my subscribers and for those who may find my channel, check out therealnews.com, and particularly the the report from the Real News about China being the driver of eradicating global poverty. I don't know how to do the links. I'm not all that tech savvy in that way, so you'll have to go to Real News and look it up yourself. I would suggest you subscribe to the Real News, and if you can, donate to the Real News so that they can keep doing the reporting that they're doing. I, as I said, I place high value and respect for therealnews.com. All right, thank you for your time.